Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our September 7th North Middlesex Council meeting. Roll call, we're all here except Councillor Hemming has sent his regrets. Disclosure of pecuniary interests, if you have any, please send them in to our clerk. Minutes of previous meeting from the August 10th, any business arising or errors or omissions? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve our minutes for August 10th. Councillor Moyer, second by Councillor McClinchy, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. So at this time, we need to have a motion to adjourn the regular meeting and proceed into public meetings at 6:01, I believe it is, including committee of adjustment as listed on the agenda. Motion to go. Councillor Nickel, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor? Carried. Our first item for planning is the notice of public meeting to consider application ZBA 10-2022 temporary use of 3900 Elginfield Road, Park Hill Meats. Yes, sir, if you'd like to come up here to this table here. All right. Good evening. Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, the purpose and effect of the rezoning renewal application is to continue to temporarily permit a 30 square meter or 320 square foot storage container and a 22 square meters or 240 square foot mobile office trailer to be located in the front yard on a rural industrial parcel of land for a period of 2 years for the purpose of accommodating employees and additional storage until a building expansion is completed. The lands were subject to a temporary use zoning bylaw application in 2019, which was granted on September 4th, 2019, and resulted in permission for the structures, which are highlighted in red on your screens in front of you. Red little boxes, and that shows the existing locations of those two structures. Park Hill Meats has not yet begun the construction of a building expansion and is therefore seeking an extension to the temporary permission for an additional period of 2 years. And the applicant is anticipated to submit a site plan control application in the near future. The provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the North Middlesex official plan all generally permit agriculturally related industrial uses, such as an abattoir, so long as it does not impact surrounding farming operations or natural heritage features. A storage container and mobile office trailer are associated uses of the abattoir operation, and staff are not aware of any compatibility conflicts since the establishment of the temporary structures in 2019. Storage containers are permitted accessory use within the rural industrial zone, however located in the rear or the side yard, whereas the proposed structures are in the front yard. Therefore, the permission is being sought after to continue to be located in the spot that they currently are today. Notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority has had a chance to review the application and can confirm no concerns were identified with the previous 2019 application. Therefore, ABCA does not have a concern with the additional request for the extension of another 2 years. The North Middlesex Chief Building Official has no objections to the application, and at the time of writing the subject report, no comments or concerns have been received from members of the public. So it is recommended that the application be approved for a period of 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. The applicant, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Stephanie. Nothing, is just we are.
Oh, sorry, I'll get you to do your microphone on. Just there's a button there.
I should, okay,
Thank
sorry. Yeah, so this extension is for 2 years. We are anticipating, we already started the site planning process with the staff of the municipality, and we anticipate that we will finish that by the next month or so. It's about the strategic expansion we are going through, that we are hoping to add another 12 to 14,000 square feet of building and equipment on the site. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There is no public here to have any comments, so questions from council? Any questions on this? Seeing no questions, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, yes, sir. Good luck.
Have a good night.
Our next is the notice of public meeting to consider application ZBA 11-2022, condition of consent for 34903 Lurie Road. And I don't see the applicants here, so do we have them online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
John Burnett.
John, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Barely, but you're there.
Yeah, sorry, I'll turn this up a little louder. Is that better?
I think that's could you come closer to your microphone a little bit?
Is that better?
We can proceed with
Kinda?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
We'll start. Stephanie, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you. So the purpose and effect of the application for the rezoning application is to implement a condition of a severance application, consent B13/2021, which conditionally severed a lot with an area of approximately 1.26 acres in order to accommodate the disposal of a surplus farm dwelling. More specifically, the zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to rezone the severed lot of consent B13/2021 from the general agricultural A1 zone to the agricultural small holding AG1 zone to recognize the residential use of the lands and to limit the range of permitted uses. Additionally, the application proposes to rezone the retained lands of consent B13/2021 from the general agricultural A1 zone to the general agricultural exception A1-99 zone in order to prohibit the establishment of new dwellings on the remnant farm parcel. Staff have reviewed both the severed and retained lots and have received the preliminary survey and the registered plan and have no concerns in regards to zoning conformity for either of the lots. And therefore staff offers support for the application. Notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff received the following comments. The North Middlesex Chief Building Official has no objection to the application, and the Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority does not oppose the approval of the requested zoning bylaw amendment as a condition of a previously approved consent application. And at the time of writing the subject report, no comments were received from the members of the public regarding the proposal. So it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. This time I would ask the applicant if you had anything you'd like to add. I believe you're muted, sir.
Sorry, just getting used to a new setup here. I don't have anything else to add at this point in time. I think Stephanie summarized that well. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions from council on this application? No questions from council? Once again, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. At this time, we're looking for a motion that the public meeting adjourn and return to our regular meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Moyer. All in favor? Carried. Okay, this time we have a delegation, North Frontenac Telephone System. And I believe it's Grant Ruffley, is that right? Good evening. Just, yeah. Perfect.
Good evening. We're here in support of our request for the access agreement, municipal access agreement, which we've been working with Jonathan on. And also to answer any questions you may have with our upcoming Infrastructure Ontario project, which I'm not sure if you have the maps for that.
I believe we do have it. You just, yeah, there it is. We have it up there now. I believe you have it on your iPads, don't you? Okay.
The map I think you're looking at is our coverage map, and this is a build funded through the Accelerated High-Speed Internet program put out by the province through a competitive auction process. We were the successful bidder for what they call Middlesex Lot 50, which is, I would say, the northwestern portion of the county of Middlesex, which overlaps a large portion of the township of North Middlesex. The plan is to actually start in your area with the initial part of the construction as soon as we can get our access agreement executed, and we have been working with your roads department already, submitting our building permit drawings or municipal access road access drawings. Our hope is to be able to get under construction by late September. The program requirements are to complete this fiber optic network build by the end of 2025. It's our hope to actually have the residents in your community connected to live fiber well before that. And it's one of the reasons we're trying to get under construction as quickly as possible. So the coverage footprint that you see on your screen outlines what was defined by the province during this bidding process as underserved areas. So you'll note that areas like Park Hill, Elsa Craig are excluded from the coverage. That's because they've determined that the residents in those areas already have the ability to access broadband speeds of 50 megabit download and 10 megabit upload. The areas that are shown in red are the rural roads that are considered the underserved roads. And those are the areas that we will build a fiber optic network with direct fiber connectivity for the residents and businesses and farms throughout those areas. When complete, this will give the rural residents located on these roads the same level of connectivity that someone enjoys in any of the major urban centers throughout the country, including places like Toronto. And it'll create a fiber optic network that allows for, you know, as much as we can currently forecast growth in demand for broadband connectivity with simply scaling electronics as opposed to having to build anything out in the roadways. So it's I don't like to use the word future proof because we never quite know what's coming down, but it's as future proof as you can create an infrastructure system for telecommunication systems, you know, in the current world.
Okay. Questions from council? Councilor Moyer, go ahead.
Will this be done in phases, or are you looking at it on the whole?
Yes, it will be. So there's approximately just under, and we're still refining the final footprint with the province, but just under 1,000 kilometers of roadway throughout the area that we're building. Probably a good 25% of that lands in North Middlesex. We've broken the entire lot into 5 network segments and attempted to look at phasing the working. And there's phasing numbers, segment numbers that are shown on the map that was distributed. Those aren't the phasing numbers. Those are actually network segment numbers that we had established during our submission process to the province. Our phasing numbers are different, and the area around North Middlesex is actually what we're deeming as construction phase 1. And within that area, we will also work, there'll likely be a total of 3 crews mobilized. So we will work through the area as quickly and efficiently as possible, because we do find once the word is out in the public and the machinery is there, we tend to get a lot of pressure for how soon connections are available. So the more equipment we can get out through the network segment, the quicker we can get it connected together, fused in and live. It's our hope that by utilizing 2 or 3 crews in this first network segment, that we'll be able to liven it up sometime early in the new year, 2023. Sure.
You just run the stubs to the end of the road then, or we be doing hookups as well?
So there's multiple phases. In the first phase, which is the network build, they'll run primarily in the roadway in the utility corridor, and as part of that construction process, they'll leave the what we call the drops at the property lines, and then as we progress through the construction, we get closer to live network availability. Our sales teams will actually reach out and contact the residents in the area, and any work beyond those drops will be governed by people requesting service. So it will be ready sort of at the property line should they decide to get the service a year from now.
Okay, right. And I see on some of the roads you've run stubs in and then stopped. Is that you've done some research on just where residential units are, and you haven't gone past those?
So that's actually a really good question. There's a number of components in the material that was supplied during the bidding process, which included the excluded areas, meaning that they determined that it was already serviced by some other provider. In some cases, even something like a coax cable network will meet the service thresholds. They won't meet the service threshold of what a fiber network will do, but it does meet the minimum service threshold that the province determined. They identified some what they called optional areas. I can't speak to the logic behind where they listed the optional areas, and those weren't included in the base build layout. And then they also gave coverage in terms of the physical addresses, which we then overlap with our data, including impact data for the actual residences that are out there. And so where you do see some sections where we'll go down one part of a road and down another part of a road, but it's not joined, we've determined through the data analysis that there aren't any residents there. Where it's optional, there may be some sections of road that aren't shown as covered. We have submitted, as of last week, a proposal to the province to fill in any of the sections that weren't deemed as required to serve under the original contract. I don't have an update. We'll keep Jonathan posted as we get the feedback from the province. It's our hope that we can close any gaps that are remaining.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McClinchy.
Okay, I was driving up 21 early spring in that up into Huron County, and they were doing the fiber network there. So they were really moving along really good. So how far advanced were you? Was that the same company or was that another company? Huron County.
So Huron County, that was probably one of the SWIFT funded programs. We didn't work in Huron County. I think I know which of the companies it is that had, I think, 3 projects there. So it's someone we know well, but it wasn't our company that was working there.
So I was maybe you would know the answer though. Now it's already there. So is it then up to the homeowner if they would want to be able to connect right then and there, or how do you know how that works, or would it be the same situation?
For all the companies, it's very, very similar. So what would happen is as I was saying, the main construction will go down the roadway and they will do what's called breakouts. So individual customer drops. Typically, if they don't have a contract or a service request from the customer, they'll terminate it at their property line. They won't take it onto the private property. Okay. Preferably for the construction crews, they like to get as many orders as they can while they're in the area. And what's called a drop crew will come along behind the main construction crew. They'll pick up that drop that's terminated at the property line and extend it into the side of the house. And they'll do that with what's called a micro duct. And then they'll actually jet the fiber and hook that service up. But they'll only do that portion of the work if there's been a service request from the customer.
Okay, thank you.
And they can do that during construction or anytime thereafter. Very, very much the same. Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Just to expand a little bit on Councillor Moore's question, your discussion with him about the stops at the roads. And as I'm looking at the map, the reason I'm asking is because it's going to affect me personally. If I'm looking at Sylvan Road, which is the western end of where you're doing your construction and coming off of Park Hill Drive, it seems to just go to the first property. And there are a number of houses beyond that, not all the way to Elliott Road, but certainly beyond what appears to be on the map here.
So that could be, it could be something that's listed as an optional area. There was another piece in the format of the program that had a 5%. I forget the proper terminology, but it amounted to 5% of the overall footprint in terms of the subscriber count that was omitted in the original design based on the highest cost sections. And basically what they were trying to do there is ensure that the dollars went as far as possible. So that could be one listed as an optional area, two listed as a high cost section. What I can say is both of those components are included in the proposal that we've submitted. There's two phases to the process. I guess there's three. There's to be the successful bidder. Upon success, and when we receive notice, we submit a network layout map. Then there's a vetting process where we work with the technical advisors for the province, and that includes verifying that we haven't omitted anything except something that falls in the 5% category or the optional category. Once that's frozen, that becomes the base plan, and that's the draft plan that you're seeing on your screen represents that base plan. As soon as that was done, we have the ability, I guess the option, it's not required, but it is an option to submit a proposal to pick up any or all of the omitted addresses for whatever reason that they were omitted, as long as they're not considered a served area. And I think where you're talking about, that wouldn't be considered a served area. Therefore, it would be either a 5% or omitted. Our proposal has captured all of that. So I can tell you that in our proposal, we're attempting to cover that section of road you're referring to. I don't have the feedback from the province yet as to whether that's been accepted. And that's where what I can do is sort of keep Jonathan up to date in terms of what the modifications are.
I certainly hope you can, because I actually live right there and you're not coming to my house.
Yeah.
and
that is one of the difficulties of the way the program is designed. And we did a total of 8 SWIFT projects funded by SWIFT. And we had the same situation where you had to designate a stop point based on where the funding extended to. And inevitably you stranded one or multiple addresses. We had one down in Dufferin County where we stranded one of the school board locations, and it was a tricky thing to navigate. As it turned out, we were able to work together with everybody to get some extra funding, and we subsidized it and we're able to extend it. So we've taken a similar approach where we've said, these are higher cost sections. Here's the cost that we do need from the province. There's large funding amounts available for these projects. One of the reasons that these areas haven't been built by either the tier 1 telcos or companies like ours, we've got a history of over 55 years serving rural areas. We know how to work in them. We know how to develop them. At a certain point, your business model just doesn't show the return. So the province has taken a great initiative to say, okay, we'll fund the difference. But when they make it a competitive process, and in this case, it was a reverse auction, they force the companies to competitively keep increasing their subsidies. When you do that, then you look at these high cost sections and say, unless you can give us extra funding, we've stretched it as far as we can. We've subsidized it, in some cases beyond what we would normally do. So, it's our hope, and certainly from your perspective, where you get chances to talk to your local provincial parliament member and lobby them a little bit to say, we understand that there is a proposal to make sure that the rest of the roads are picked up. I don't think it could hurt to make sure that they're making that phone call to the Ministry of Infrastructure to say it's our hope that all of these roads are completed, because that's certainly in our best interest as well. You know, if we're going to serve this area, we'd rather not see those gaps.
I agree, and you keep referring to high cost, but I would counter that argument by saying there's 5 houses within 500 meters. So I don't see that being a relatively high cost in comparison to the rest of the.
Specifics for that
Right.
one.
I understand.
There are some peculiar anomalies. I will agree with you there. We probably did one of the most robust reviews, and it doesn't mean that we captured every or corrected every sort of data point, but we take the ministry's information, we overlay it with, we do 3 layers of analysis. We do a satellite analysis, we digitize the satellite data, we overlap it with the MPAC data, and combine those two. And then we actually have a handheld app, and we actually have one of our technicians physically drive every single road that's on this and confirm the data. He can pull the map data right onto his phone and confirm what's there. Doesn't mean we get it 100%, but we do find that we tend to get it as accurate as possible. And then we do, when we submit our follow-up proposal, we feel that we tend to capture more of those sort of anomalies, let's call them. And in our hope, it would get us to as close to 100% service as we can get within that footprint.
I will continue to remain optimistic then.
We're optimistic because we do know that the province, their overall objective is to get to something like 97% plus coverage for the bulk of the province. And if they're true to that, then we should get a positive response to the proposal. Yeah.
Other questions? Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Excuse me, this question may overlap Deputy Mayor Nelson's. However, if residents on a certain concession road have sufficient internet, yet they would like to upgrade to the fiber network, is that available by petitioning your company, or is that something that they need to petition the infrastructure ministry?
So we're always happy to look at it and provide feedback on the ability to expand the network. Once the fiber is in the area, I can speak to the fiber builds that we've been doing over the last 7 years. The one that we built, we acquired North Frontenac Telephone, our group, 7 years ago, and with a view of expanding into more rural areas. Our first build was in Haliburton and then Minden. We continue to add on to that network to this day. So we're always interested in looking at it. It is challenging when you talk about just adding another sort of countryside road. We would give fairly quick feedback on whether it's feasible on its own. In a situation where we can't justify that cost, there's a number of different ways we approach it. One is to, if it's reasonable to say, here's a capital cost that would have to be shared, and the homeowners would have to do a contribution. Usually we'll be happy to amortize that across a contract. But in this case, I would also encourage lobbying the province, because there definitely are some gray areas in terms of what was deemed to be a served area. And by that, all it had to do was qualify as showing that it meets a 50 megabit download, 10 megabit upload speed. Without getting into the technical side, because I get outside of my realm quickly, I need my technical guys, but different systems perform differently, and therefore a 5010 on a quiet day that meets the threshold requirements that had it deemed a served area on a busy day. And everybody discovered this during the pandemic, when all of a sudden lots of people were using much more bandwidth than they normally do. That system can drop off very, very quickly. And you may know what I'm talking about. So those are situations where if you can make that case to the province, that there may be the ability to increase some of the coverage footprints. They're the first to admit it is a very complicated and sophisticated process to overlay everybody's coverage maps. We all submit service area maps and service levels to CRTC. They have a mapping team that attempts to consolidate all of that and compare it against their data and create this sort of master coverage map. That's what the province had to rely on. It is an imperfect science, and constantly you'll have overlaps of areas. You'll also have situations where some companies will submit a coverage map for what they hope to have done by the end of next year. That doesn't mean that it's done or that they're on the hook to do it. And then you can end up with sections of roadway that appear to be served and we can't include them, and yet there's no service there. Anytime that someone can make that case, we'll pursue it collectively with the people that identify it. Because anywhere we can put the data together, we'll submit it ourselves. Where it is a service level that meets the threshold, but somewhat inadequately, then I would encourage that you make your case, and we're certainly there to assist wherever possible.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Moyer?
Yeah, do you just do the construction of this, or are you a provider as well?
We're a provider.
You're a
First and
provider.
foremost, we're a provider. We happen to do our own construction as well. But yes, we've been a network telecommunications operator since as North Frontenac since the 1950s, and actually under another name prior to that.
Okay. Do you have basic costs that we run per month for your service?
So I don't have anything with me right now, but the cost information is available on our website, and we have a central 800 number that you can find on our website, as well as a sales@nftctelecom.com email that if you identify where you're inquiring from, it's actually assigned to one of our sales staff, and they'll reach out to provide specific information. What I can tell you is that the rates will be very consistent with any of the markets right now, and with the services that we provide in Mount Bridges, Glencoe, and some of the surrounding areas.
Other questions? Okay, I would just ask, so that hole, I'll call it the giant hole in the middle of North Middlesex, that is a serviced area.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that large blank section, that is deemed as a served area, correct.
Okay. The other thing I'll mention is I received an email from your company quite a while ago talking about this project. And I remember looking up your company and doing some research. And then I reached out to Jonathan and to county IT to say, is this legit? You know, because this was out of the blue for me at that time.
Yes.
And it's a very exciting project. And it's good to see we have a lot of people talk about it and want service. And this is a good project coming to the community.
Yep. And I apologize that we couldn't we came sort of preemptively met with Jonathan under a bit of a curtain, in that we were under a confidentiality agreement with the province while we waited for announcements to be made. Took longer than we anticipated. So we sort of snuck that map out to your office in advance, understanding that the sooner we could get everybody familiar with it, the sooner we could come and ask for permission. As I understand it, we're a little bit out of the gate quicker than most companies. They still have it in their engineering departments. We've been building in rural areas, as I said, for 7 years now. We know the need that everybody has. So we thought it's in everybody's best interest to just get the project out of the gate as quickly as humanly possible. And that's the discussion that we had with Jonathan and his team, and they've been extremely helpful in accommodating receiving our drawings while we're still working through on the access agreement. And really, that's the sort of collaboration that gets these projects in the ground and gets people connected, sometimes a year to 2 years ahead of the normal timeframes.
Well, I appreciate that. And you're right. We'll do our part in lobbying with our MPPs and to see if we can't fill some of these gaps that are in there. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Anything else from council? If not, thank you very much, Grant, for coming. And it's a good news story, and we look forward to seeing that project completed.
Great. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. This time we do have department reports. Our first one is a report from the clerk on the new animal control bylaw.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As a result of some inquiries and concerns about lack of exotic animal provisions in the current bylaw, which I've attached to the report as well, a new one was developed. And that was done in conjunction with the Municipal Enforcement Unit. And they provided a template from Dutton Dunwich to use. So I used that, and it was in the process of developing it. And I put it aside when the election started to ramp up, the election process started to ramp up. And as you know, at the August meeting, there was an endorsement of a position regarding livestock guardian dogs and herding dogs. So those were incorporated within this new proposed bylaw. So I'm bringing that forward in this report, the new bylaw, and recommending that council receive the report titled Animal Control Bylaw as information, and further that council authorize first and second reading for a new animal control bylaw as attached. The purpose of that first and second reading is to provide for a period of public comment and viewing on the website. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Questions for this? Councillor Nicol.
So I have two questions. My first question is, under livestock, is that where chickens and roosters would be? So you have it says addressed in accordance with the North Middlesex zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Through your worship, to Councillor Nicol, the livestock provisions that are currently within the zoning bylaw would continue. And chickens, other forms of livestock would be governed in terms of location under the zoning bylaw. That would not change.
One more
Second
question. I don't know how you do all these names, but there's a section in here regarding alpacas and llamas. And my question would be to you right now, if this bylaw went through, what would happen to people who currently have those animals?
Similarly to the situation that the clerk was mentioning, governing factor above this would be the zoning bylaw or the zoning itself. If there's an existing alpaca or llama, I would believe that since it's prior to the bylaw being endorsed, they would be legal non-conforming. So they would be okay with the status of what's on the property and its intended use.
Thank you.
It would be legal non-conforming if it was in ahead of the bylaw?
Yes, Your Worship. The intent was not to prevent anything that's currently in place. And in fact, that would be enacting the bylaw in bad faith. So the intent is to allow those uses that are currently in place to continue.
All right, thank you. Other questions for this? If not, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Keogh. In favor? And we'll do our readings at over the bylaws, correct? Our next one is a report from the clerk on the bylaw enforcement contract.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Let me just bring that matter up. As a result of the cessation of services of the Municipal Enforcement Unit back in early July, the municipality of North Middlesex hasn't had bylaw enforcement services in place, although there was a recent matter that we called upon what is being proposed here, this firm, to do a more urgent matter. As a result, there was a reach out to the CAO back in July, I believe, by a firm in Lucan. And that firm's name is Tenant Security Group. And I mainly reached out to the individual primarily responsible for that organization and inquired if they would be interested in providing a service to North Middlesex. There were other options available that were discussed locally on a staff level, but the best option appeared to be continuing with a bylaw enforcement contract with a firm that does that work. So we come up with a recommendation and a contract. And the recommendation is that council receive the report titled bylaw enforcement contract as information, and further that council authorize a bylaw enforcement contract with Tenant Security Group for a 6-month period from September 7th, 2022 until February 7th, 2023 for 3 7-hour shifts per week.
Questions?
If I may comment, now that is good news. I'm really happy about that because the complaints are piling up.
We all are, yes. We
Yeah.
need to do it, but it was to get.
But no, I do have questions. So,
Okay.
so then for 6 months, so then will this firm we will have to renew this? It's like an ongoing 6-month.
Jonathan? Richard? Okay.
Yes, your worship, to Councillor McKellinchy. It's the initial period for a contract of 6 months. The contract does provide for a renewal period if both parties are acceptable. Before doing that, there would be a further report to council on the activities over the past 6 months. So in January, probably the second meeting in January, there would be a report to council on what has transpired with tenant security and whether or not it's recommended to move forward.
Okay, so how often will they supply a report? Would it be monthly, quarterly, or it's only 6 months? Would it be monthly or bi-weekly or who knows?
Through your worship to Councillor McClinchy, my intent would be to receive a report once a week.
Oh, yes.
With the coverage of the 3 shifts.
Yeah.
For a prior week. That's what we received from MEU. There was a weekly report. It covered those activities for the 3 shifts that were in place. And that's what's going to be occurring.
Will all this information, all the complaints would be forwarded to them through you, or who does it go? You're the lucky one?
Through your worship to Councillor McClinchy, I don't know about lucky, but
I know the feeling.
I haven't been that lucky so far. But with respect to the complaints, it would be a goal for a public complaint to come in, reception staff receive it and send it directly to tenant group. And it would be documented and sent through.
Okay. Well, I got a pile, but anyhow.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a question? Other questions? Only question I have is budget wise, are we good like for what we had budgeted for MEU for the rest of the year?
Through your worship to council, it is an increased cost, but kind of mimicking the 6-month period for this contract. We're using it as a trial base to kind of set the baseline on what the incurred costs were, what our needs are, and to Councillor McClinchy's point, how fast can we clean up the backlog in terms of our resource levels and service. So there's a little bit of unknown that we have to go through, but that's why we've shortened it so we have the opportunity to kind of assess it. It will have to increase our budget line item in the new year, but as you recall, MEU came to us with a surplus fuel charge, which is still below what tenant is proposing. But in the fair market value of what we've done so far, there are not a lot of companies that offer this service, and we need somebody in to do the service.
Agreed.
Just a question. Is this company, they provide service in other area municipalities around us? Do they do South Huron? Or do you know them?
Your worship, through you to Councillor McClinchy, I know they do North Perth. That is
Okay.
one of their primary functions or municipal functions. I think they do Lucan, but I'm not positive, but I know they do North Perth.
Through your worship, what I can offer that I know they also are recently retained by Blue Water.
Yeah,
Lucan is actually supplemented by Middlesex Center as as a one-off service that's been there for a very long time.
I was just curious about or South Huron, if they were doing up there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
not
they're
sure
so
either,
close,
but
yeah.
they are doing other
Yeah,
municipalities.
okay, well. all right.
There. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Canelson.
Yes, to Jonathan, you mentioned something that piqued my interest, Middlesex Center. I thought we were exploring that option as well. Was that not feasible?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, not to jeopardize the contract that's right in front of us, but that has been explored. There's opportunities to refine that, but economies of scale at Middlesex Center need to be seriously examined in consideration of the joint building of portfolio that they just undertook. We need the service, so that's why, again, we're going with the one that's right in front of us. But certainly anything and everything's on the table as we go through this process.
Thank you.
Okay. And this company will have some continuity to knowing this municipality as well by the staff that they have. Any other questions on this? Seeing no other questions, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, second by Councillor Moyer. All in favor? Carried. And actually, I want to thank staff for getting to that, because that was something that had to happen as soon as possible, and thank you for getting that accomplished. So, our report from the clerk once again, the cemetery bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next report is regarding the cemetery bylaw. If council recalls, it recently passed a new bylaw, I believe in March, and it was submitted to the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, which is a regulatory authority in Ontario for approval of cemeteries and cemetery bylaws more particularly. The Bereavement Authority reported back and rejected the bylaw, and it was so, there were so many requested corrections that it was believed appropriate to develop a new bylaw, which is what we've done. And this bylaw has been sent to the Bereavement Authority. The representative that came back with regards to the corrections on the first bylaw, and they have approved this bylaw. So it was recommended that council receive the report titled Cemetery Bylaw as information, and further that council authorize a new cemetery bylaw as attached.
Any questions on that? No, we need to move this forward. We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Keogh, Councillor Nickel, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Report from the treasurer and the 2021 year-end surplus reserve transfers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So the report in front of you, the recommendation is that the report titled 2021 year-end surplus reserve transfers be received, and that council approve the 2021 year-end operating surplus reserve transfers as per Schedule B attached to this report. Now, if you will remember, at the last meeting of council, the municipal auditor presented the 2021 financial statements to council. And in his presentation, the auditor outlined a surplus slightly over $5 million, but also explained at that time that that included all departmental operating surpluses and or deficits, as well as the asset increase for the municipality. So this report basically outlines or recommends the distribution of the surplus for a total transfer of 3.7 million. The total amount of the property tax related recommended transfers is 1.8 million. Of the water wastewater rate related recommended transfers is 1.88 million. The building permit is $101,000. Now, Schedule A outlines for you the surplus or deficit position for the municipality per department. The Schedule B is the actual recommended transfers, and I'll spend just a little bit more time on Schedule B here tonight, just as an indication. So you'll see the total at the bottom of your recommended surplus distribution of 3.7 million, of which 1.6 million would be going to the working capital reserve, 100,000 to the bridge reserve, 66,000 to the vehicle and equipment reserve, 101,000 to the building revenue stabilization reserve fund, 1.6 million to the water reserve, 241,000 to the sanitary and storm sewer reserve. The Schedule C also shows the transfers that were actually done throughout the year based on the budget approval for 2021. I just want to outline here the reason why the recommended surplus to the water reserve as well as the working capital reserve is so high is because throughout the year, the budgeted amount of the transfers had not been done, and we are taking care of doing that in this transfer here. So if you'll notice on Schedule C under the environmental services, per the budget, there was 1.3 million that was to be transferred to the water reserve and 886,000 that was to be transferred to the sanitary and storm sewer reserve. Those transfers were not done throughout the year. So we are taking care of that in doing while we do our surplus reserve transfers. And finally, Schedule D outlines your reserve balances at the end of 2021 prior to doing these recommended transfers here tonight. I now open the floor to any questions that you may have.
All right, questions from council. Deputy Mayor Pinellas.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Estelle, this has been somewhat confusing for me over the years. So my question for you is, that 3.7 million, is that actual cash that's being transferred?
The 3.7 million is on paper being transferred to those reserves. We do have separate bank accounts for the different reserves, for some of the different reserves, while some others are just being maintained in our operating bank account.
Right, but in the past, we were led to believe that some of the reserves could have been equipment purchases or other costs that are associated with that, but that's not the case here. These are actual dollars being put into reserve funds.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Other question? Councilman.
Yeah, just for clarity to Estelle. So when we're collecting water and sewer, accounts, does the water go into one reserve of its own and the sanitary sewer into another reserve, not a reserve, but an account of its own? Because if we have to look down the road for a sewer treatment plant, is that money going in there, or is like what we're collecting today from everyone, like water, the water bill, the sewer, and then the wastewater as well?
Through the mayor to Councillor McClinchy, yes, the water and the wastewater have their own accounts where the funds are going to be deposited to.
Okay, so it's just sitting in a reserve right now. Is that what you're saying? Or you want to put it in the reserve?
Right now, if you're talking about the actual cash, right now is sitting in our operating fund, in our general bank account.
Oh yeah, but you want to get it out there.
Done, we're going to transfer it into the water reserve bank account.
Okay, so all right, so when there is operating to be done out of that, is that another account of its own again, or does that come out of the reserve, or that actual account where we collect from the public, the residents? I'm just not clear on how that.
Okay, so it is recommended that the water, wastewater departments be self-sufficient. So the operating costs for those departments during budget time are all included within the municipality's operating budget. But at the end of the day, whether the operating surplus or deficit is being transferred into the reserve or taken out of the reserve in regards to the water and sewer operating budget.
Okay, I have another question. When it comes to Park Hill, Craig and the rural areas, it's all one lump sum. Is that what you're saying? What we're collecting?
That is correct.
And then if there is an expense, like a new sewer treatment plant for either Craig or Park Hill, how does that work?
That
As far as monies go.
Okay, so North Middlesex is one municipality. So it is all the water is put in or taken out of the water reserve for the entire municipality. It is not divided per different wards.
Thank you.
And she did say the water, but a large capital expenditure is something that would have to be decided here at council and through staff as to how that's funded. I mean, that's a large expenditure, a separate expenditure. Yeah. Yeah, that would be done through council. What decision on that? Other questions? No other questions? I think it's a good report, Estelle. It's nice to go through it and know exactly where things are going. It's a good report. So if there's no other questions, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Moyer. All in favor? Opposed? No? We're in favor? Okay. All right. Our next one is a report from the Treasurer 2021 Annual Development Charges Update.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. So this report, the purpose of this report is to meet the reporting requirements under the Development Charges Act. And the recommendation is that council receive the report titled 2021 Annual Development Charges Update as information. So the Development Charges Act requires that the treasurer provide an annual financial statement to council relating to development charges, and also to ensure that council shall ensure the annual financial statement is made available to the public. So the items that must be appearing on the annual statement of development charges is the opening and closing balances of the reserve funds, the all assets whose capital costs were funded by development charges, and for each of those assets, the portions that were not funded using development charges, how they will be funded or have been funded. And it also must state that the municipality is compliant with Section 51(9) of the Development Charges Act. So attachment 1 to the report outlines such information. So the balances of all of our development charges account as at the end of 2021. And it also shows that in 2021, the municipality covered 197,000 from the Parkland Reserved Development Charge Fund covered 6,400 of the Park Hill Splash Pad upgrade, the capital project that happened in 2021. And it also states that the municipality is compliant with the Development Charges Act. I open the floor to questions.
Questions on this? No one has any questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Nickel, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ellison. All in favor? Carried. Thanks. Once again, I think this is Richard's, I believe, Compliance Audit Committee.
Yes, thank you, Worship. As a result of the Municipal Election Act requirements for a Compliance Audit Committee, and that is under Section 8837 of the Municipal Elections Act, there is a Compliance Audit Committee required to be appointed, and the naming of members and such other necessary matters. A bylaw has been prepared and is on the agenda for later tonight. There is a recommendation that council receive the report titled Compliance Audit Committee as information, and further, that council authorize a compliance audit committee bylaw, providing for the appointment of members and such other necessary matters.
Questions on that?
When you say members? Who are they?
Through your worship to Councilor McClinchy, there are 3 members. And if I can bring up the bylaw, I can name them for you.
Okay, you got them? Do you want to name them anyways? It was brought up.
Yeah. The 3 members are Andrew Wright, Christine Scrimgeour, and Daniel Ross.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us, moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor Nickel. In favor? Carried. Thank you. And your next one, Richard, is restricted acts following nomination day.
Yes, always a pleasant matter. As a result of the new council or the nominations that have been in place, there is a determination under the Municipal Act that there is restricted act provisions come to force because only 5 members of the current council are running for re-election. The minimum amount is 6. Therefore, the restricted acts come into place. Restricted acts include, under the Municipal Act, the appointment or removal from office of any officer of the municipality, the hiring and dismissal of any employee in the municipality, the disposition of any real personal property of the municipality which has a value exceeding $50,000, meaning any expenditures or incurring other liability which exceeds $50,000. And there is an exception, clause 3C and D, which are the budgetary amounts I just mentioned, do not apply if the disposition or liability was included in the most recent budget adopted by the council before nomination day in the election. And there is a resolution, a recommendation that council receive the report titled Restricted Acts of Council following nomination day as information.
Any questions for Richard on that? Because he really enjoys that report, so. No questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Councillor McClinchy. In favor? Carried. Thanks, Richard. Passing of accounts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report in front of you outlines the municipality's expenses from August 5th, 2022 to August 25th, 2022. And the recommendation is that council receive and accept the following accounts payable report as information only. So these set expenses total $2,069,806. I opened the floor to any questions.
Questions? Councillor Moyer.
Thank you. I guess this wouldn't be more for Brandon. On the Elsie Craig washroom, the medical center, the doors, there's 12,872. Is that just general maintenance or is there some damage done there or?
Through Mayor Rock, Councillor Moyer, that would be one that's the Spring Recreation Center.
Elsie Craig washroom repairs to the medical center.
So
Sort of sleep. Wash the door.
Yeah, so the majority of that cost was part of the accessibility grant we received for the Elsie Craig Recreation Center washrooms. So that was installing 3 door openers with control, and then they also installed them at the Parko Medical Center as per request we budgeted for 2021 budget for the supply chain and issues with installers. Yeah, it's more.
Okay. Other questions? Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So I think Jonathan may have the first one. And that is the bridge, McLean Taylor, the Beechwood Bridge. I noticed another 43,000. Is that the final payment? Was that like the holdback?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, I believe that should be the final holdback. There was the last warranty walkthrough that was completed by Street and Associates about a month and a half ago, which released those funds.
Okay, my other question is also for you, I believe, and that is for Brant for the John Deere grader. Is that the new grader we just bought?
I believe so. I think that was just recently delivered
Okay.
about a month ago.
And my final question, it may be for Estelle or yourself, I'm not sure, but I noticed again, there's a number of attached registrations, which concerns me a little bit. Is that reflective of the COVID thing that we just went through recently, or why does there seem to be such a large number of them in the last couple months?
Could you give me a little bit more information on that one so I could look it up?
Yeah, I can as soon as I find it here. I just kind of flowed right past it.
Estelle may have it too. She's on.
Estelle, do you know what I'm talking about?
Are
there it
those
is.
the payments going to the tax team?
There's Trickety et al. Tax Team Incorporated. There's about
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them.
9. There should be 9 of them, yes. Those are for properties that we have initiated the tax sale process for.
That seems to be relatively high, and what I'm concerned is that a follow from the COVID that we just experienced, or what are your thoughts?
I may be wrong, but I believe my predecessors did not go with by the book in regards to which properties have been sent for tax sale. But these are all of the properties that are more than 2 years delinquent in the payment of their property taxes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Nickel?
Yeah, it's not a lot of money, but on Mitchell's Home Building Center, I noticed that some of the invoices date back to January the 1st, 2021. Is that a typo or it's on an invoice date?
Do you see from
Check
Mitchell's?
number 010382.
Yeah, we, there have been some invoices that go astray, as there are in a lot of businesses. We pay the invoices when they are brought to us, and this one would have been one of the ones that may have fallen through the cracks.
Okay, I just was curious why it would be on New Year's Day, like in 2021. So thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Estelle.
Thank you.
Don't forget your granddaughter's supposed to be there next time. Committee
I'll
reports.
do my best, Your Honor.
Committee reports. Rather than go through them all, is there any committee reports to report?
I just want to make a
Yep.
comment that I reached out to Salva Bay about some concerns I have with some of the activity adjacent to our lagoon with all the heavy equipment and whatnot there. So we received a reply from Jeff Kay today that we'll be visiting the location to explore what's actually taking place there.
Excellent. Excellent. Anything else for the Deputy Mayor on ABCA? No? Anything you want to answer, Councillor Keogh, to the Fire Committee? Okay. Okay, is there any questions? No, if not, we'll go to correspondence. We have quite a few items. City of Owen Sound, Municipality of Port Hope requested changes to provincial Amber Alert System. Receive and file. Association of AMO Annual Report. Receive and file. Town of South Bruce Peninsula Mandatory Firefighter Certification.
I'd like
Councilor Moore.
understanding. You want to support it? I'd like to understand it better.
Can we send that to the, I'm just. is that
Through your
the
worship,
committee?
we can send it certainly back to the committee, although we don't have standing committees right now because
Right,
of the lame duck
right.
period. We can certainly defer this, but I can offer some insight to it. It's related to the mandatory certifications that keep coming back through the fire marshal's, the fire marshal's office in terms of mandatory thresholds for volunteer firefighters. Some municipalities have, because of how remote they are, have issues with being able to get people to these appropriate training modules. Some of them are offered online now through COVID, but it is a heavy burden cost in terms of, when you talk about lodging and the amount of certifications. It has been in the industry for a number of years. The province or the fire marshal's office ebbs and flows with, making this mandatory, and they revisit it on a regular basis. As of the boat last year, if memory serves me correct, they kind of gave formal notice that it will be coming back into consideration. All these things are real for us as well, but we don't have the geography to compete with in terms of some of the lodging that would be an unburdened cost. Even the synopsis of the 3 to 5 years, although I would like to think we have a better retention, that is still something to consider as well too.
I'd like to hear Councillor Moore's rationale for supporting it.
I guess charged with servicing, and again, we're a small rural area, so I don't think we should be incurring the same cost. If I think if the provincial governments would like to chip in and give some funding for that, I think that'd be great. But
Okay, I understand. Thank you. I support that.
If I can just add to that, I met with a couple of mayors from the north. We had a conversation on this very thing at AMO. And if we think we have a problem, they just don't have any options, there's just not that many people there for them to pick from. And when they're having a problem with people saying, we're not taking all that time for certification. So we have a bit of a problem that way compared to what they have. They have a much larger problem. They just don't have the people to. So would it be fair do you want to support it? Is that the motion to support it? Okay. In favor? Carried. But that might be something for committee to talk about as well, what the fire department feel on that as well.
Through your worship, additionally, what I can offer is I think these certifications are very much warranted. I think to Councillor Moyer's point is, if this is a mandate or a threshold that the province is saying we have to meet, then there needs to be either some sort of better funding model, maybe at the college level rather than at the municipal level where there's a rebate or some sort. But there is value in the certification for sure. It's the mandate that's been the question about when does it become completely that you have to have it before you become a volunteer firefighter.
Okay. All right. Source drinking water protection map, Saulville Bayfield Conservation Authority and Maitland Valley. Receive and file. Municipality of Port Hope request Government of Ontario to revisit Bill 109. Consider, receive and file.
I'd like to hear the CEO's thoughts on that.
Through your worship, to the deputy mayor, Bill 109 has some interesting, I guess, levers, I will call them, on plus or minus. I like development. I like seeing progression in the community. I get why this is important. I think my misgivings on it would be we are now obligated for third party. We are obligated by other entities, being the Conservation Authority, whether it be hydro, whether it be a utility, for timely review from them. But we are ultimately on the hook as of Jan 1 if we don't expedite certain things at certain times, especially with site plan control. I would wait a little bit to see what happens. I think Bill 109 has a good position on terms of creating more homes, but maybe the penalties as they would be should be re-examined. And I think that's what the correspondence was asking, is that there needs to be more consultation on what that means. Certainly, even you could go as far as a staffing level in terms of how we manage a file as it progresses through the organization. But I believe that even if we miss a timeline, long as there's fruitful communication with an applicant, then everybody can get along. But there is some misgivings in terms of being held to somebody else's timeline, and we're ultimately on the hook. I hope that helps. It's kind of in between, but that's my 2 cents.
I think I'd like to revisit the bill. I think I would support that request.
You're making a motion to support the request. Is there a seconder for that? seconded by Counselor Moyer. In favor? In favor? Carried. Town of Wasaga Beach, Strong Mayor's Building Housing Act. Receive and file. Northumberland County endorsed resolution from municipality of Shania requesting release of all federal and provincial documents relating to the former Mohawk Institute Residential School. Receive and file. We supported June 1st. We already supported that. Northumberland County Kiera's Law. Receive and file. We supported that on August 10th. Town of Hanover endorsement of resolution from Town of South Bruce Peninsula physician shortage. We filed that at the August 10th meeting as well. North Middlesex District High School, thank you for continued support. Just make a comment to that. Councilor McClinchy and I went to that evening. It's a good evening, isn't it? It really shows how much the community is behind our schools and the high school. Town of Aylmer Warming and Cooling Center, receive and file. All right, other and urgent business. Other business? We have nothing on the paper. Anybody got other business?
Okay,
Councilor McClinchy.
As you're aware, when is the construction going to start in Main Street? Do you know? Because I've been asked that question 100 times.
Through your worship, we executed the agreement with Briex, which has allowed Briex to now issue a purchase order for the materials. Once we get a tentative schedule on delivery date, we will know when they're mobilizing. So we don't know yet because they're being subject to material. But once that becomes available, the municipality has a template and has rolled out versions of the template to some of the business community for a updated web page, and that they can be accessed through our social media as well. That will identify the schedule. We've had a pre-consultation meeting, all things being equal, as long as the material comes in at a reasonable time. Phase 1 will break ground this year. I don't know to what extent phase 1 will be built back up. It obviously will not have base coat asphalt, but will have the minimum asphalt that we need in order for it to be a traveled road. And then phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 3 is the flexibility that we need in the project, being from number 7 from Main Street all the way over to Elliott Drive for the water main. And that one's being kind of tabled as the floater because that's the least amount of impact to the community that we could get in. But that's tentatively what we're looking at right now. It's phase 1 will be constructed this year. Full asphalt restoration in 2023, where 2023 will see phase 2 and phase 3.
So how far does phase 1 take you? Like where it starts at the starting period, where does phase 1 end before they start into phase 2?
Phase 1 is from the reservoir to the Cameron Gillies. So it's the bridge right here.
Okay.
A lion's share of the work of the unknown risk is associated with the Cameron Gillies and going either underneath or above. There's a little bit of a window between the soil of above the culvert and below the bridge that we can put the water main, and we're discussing on bringing that up to speed. I can't speak to if they'll go on the other side of the Cameron Gillies right now, but it would certainly stop in and around the bridge here.
Okay, so in regards to the construction, there will be detours that will take them off of, they'll stop, I don't know if it's going to stop at King Street and go up to Union, down to Mill, up Station. Is that how that's going to work?
So if, again, it'll have to, I don't know if I recall exactly how it's going to work, but there are, in speaking with the working group for the kickoff meeting, there's going to be at least 2 detours. There'll be 1 detour for trucks to avoid and general traffic to avoid Park Hill in its entirety from a county road to a county road. And then there'll be an internal detour that reflects local traffic that generally it's taking advantage of West Park Drive, Station Street, King Street, and Mill Street, flipping back and forth. We're purchasing extra speed control devices through the project. And we are also contemplating having a number of scenarios with our public works manager about how to manage detours more on a holistic stage, because the contractor is really only going to be focused on the detours associated with what SEMA produced and what the contract and disruption of the actual road. But like I said, our public works manager, we're trying to think outside the box in what will likely impact a number of streets throughout Park Hill. So we're trying to brace for that impact in terms of having the proper safety in place.
Okay, so I've had many calls and a lot of grave concerns about residency, especially Station Street, because there's only one stop, like it's like a racetrack. From the time you come off of Mill Street, straight up, the first stop sign is at William. Why can we not have, like Catherine, have stop signs at each end of the street, like Broad Street, Emily Street, to prevent the speeding? Is that going to be a difficult request, or because they did it in Catherine?
Through your worship to the Councilor McClinchy, we are considering those. And there is a concern, I will admit that. We are also considering stop signs. We're considering reducing the speed limit. We're even going as far as, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it at this time, is temporary speed cushions. They generally don't perform well after a certain amount of time. Alternatively, although it affects residents directly, there is a component that we have to allow traffic to convey, without a lot of stops, right? Like we don't want to put stops at every single street.
Well, why did we do it in Catherine? Because that was a racetrack too.
Well, I'm saying we will look at that, but we have to be mindful that we have to convey traffic as much as we have to slow it down in a safe fashion. So we are examining that, and we have a number of things that we can put in place in order to do that. And also there's the aspect of correcting human behavior in terms of implementing new rather than it all being there at once. We want to have a gradual step, and this is in consultation with the OPP as well too. So they need to be in the know. The county needs to be in the know, because again, we're trying to, although we've identified one detour, the best proof that we had to some of these situations was actually the water main break on Park Hill Main Street. So receiving that information was valuable to us to determine what we should be looking at, and we're doing that as we speak.
Well, yeah, because I'm hoping we can, like it's going to be such a change for the people that live in that area. The amount of traffic that'll be going that way, and if there's kids, dogs, seniors, whatever, everybody gets really upset, and they think, what are we going to do? Or they're afraid of getting hit or something. Because people are just going to get there, and they don't really pay attention to who's coming off the sidewalk or off wherever to go cross over. So I just want to bring that up because it is a big concern for a lot of the people in Park Hill, especially in West Park Drive, Mill Street, Station Street. I know that for a fact.
And when do we figure we'll have a time frame as to when things will start?
As soon as I hear from Briex on the purchase order of the material.
So do you think by the next council meeting we'll know better, or it might be the beginning of the?
It might be after that one, but it's certainly within the next month, we should be able to have something presented not only on our website, but to council as well.
Then we'll know better. Okay. All right.
When they're doing this development down on Hastings Street, who put those do not enter sign? Is that the construction company that does that? Or can they do that?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, they can do that in consultation with municipality, depending on the work that they're doing.
So, yeah, because they stopped it at, I forget what street it is. They have to go around the block, and people are going, now they're going down Ann Street, and big trucks and you name it. Is there a route for them when they're doing that development site?
So unfortunately, there's only really one route into that subdivision over there where beneficiarily we had for the Westwood, the McLeod Street is being used on the opposite side of West Park Drive now. Some situations, we just don't have the benefit of having more than one entrance in. So that's why this one was identified. We can certainly look into it further, determine if it's still warranted to be up.
Yeah, because they stop at it's a George Street at the very end. But what's happening, there's big gravel trucks going down Ann Street. And they're going around the corner, like they're cutting off, they're going over the sidewalk.
I can
Huge
certainly have
trucks.
staff look into it, but
Please.
these are the growing pains of
Yeah,
construction.
well,
and
that's, I
development.
know, with development, but I figured they only had to have one route rather than two streets. Like if you go down Hastings, go back down, you go up and you go back down again.
So you're gonna look into it.
I'll look into it,
Well,
and
it's just
and I would
like,
encourage
you know,
anybody
you know
from the general public to voice their concerns, because
Heard 'em.
there are provisions within the subdivision agreement that we can hold the developer to to task. But sometimes they're not, they are responsible for all the construction that's happening, but sometimes their drivers aren't.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, thank you.
other business?
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate staff and thank staff for bringing one of the speed control signs to Park Hill. Takes a lot of pressure off of some of the calls I've been getting. Thank you, guys.
For the first day of school, especially on Main Street.
Absolutely.
where the
Great
school
idea.
crossing is. Any other business? Councilor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I've received a couple of complaints, or more so inquiries from residents in Ward 4 with the removal of 911 emergency signs. They have been taken at night, and they have been, one resident has had his replaced. However, they're replaced with the wrong 911 numbers. Can we do a phone call on that tomorrow, Jonathan, and correct that? Thank you. I was just wondering, has anybody else had that in any other areas? We've had the steel posts have been bent over, cut off, signs removed.
Okay.
So it seems to be more of a vandalism thing than anything.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other business? I just have one item that at AMO, Jonathan and I met with the infrastructure minister about, and that was regarding the Park Hill wastewater treatment plant. And you can add to it after. They were engaged in the conversation. They gave us a little extra time, which was an improvement over last year where we wasted our registration money to do that. But anyways, they were engaged in the conversation. And the one thing we did learn that they're waiting to hear from the federal government what they're going to contribute. But it sounds like they're going to put wastewater into this ICIP grant this fall so that they'll add that to it. And Jonathan, if you want to add more to that.
Through your worship, to mimic, I think we actually ended up getting about, if I timed it correctly, about another 7 minutes, which is a lot. And I think this is an evolving presentation that we've done. We've shared it with council. This year, the biggest difference was we've foregone the engineering and the need. I think we all know that we know the investment and the trickle down effect. They did not like us saying that we had to put a moratorium on Park Hill, and that made everybody's ears pop up. And I think that might be why we got the extra time, because it contravenes their more homes, more choice mandate. So I'd like to say that we kind of used some of their words against them, but that's all I can really offer. So knock on wood that we'll have some more success in the future.
So it was a good delegation. I will say we went for money and all I got was COVID, but anyways, but it was a good delegation. Any other business? Seeing none, communication. We have our deferred items, communication, county.
Thank you. Lost my thing. Thank you, Mayor Rob. I think the highlight for me was the attainable housing review presentation we had, which I found very interesting. So they'll be doing some consulting and community engagement to determine the need for housing and the opportunities for housing throughout the county. And I guess when they do the county engagement, and the next time, unfortunately, I won't be there, but I'm sure Mayor Rob will do an excellent job in representing us.
Okay, I think that was, there was a lot of topics. North Frontenac did do we did deal with that at the county for getting the approvals to crossings and that type of thing. So it did come to the county level at that time as well. And of course, the county has their newsletter coming out. That is a nice, I do like that newsletter that they send out that talk about all this stuff. Right, I think Marcy does a good job putting that out. Any questions for the county? If not, reading of the bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a number of bylaws tonight for first, second, and third reading, and one for first and second reading. And we have a motion that bylaws 086 to 097 of 2022 be read a first and second time.
Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Moyer, all in favor? Carried.
And the second resolution recommended motion is that bylaws 086 to 089 and 091 to 097 of 2022 be read a third and final time.
Councillor Nichol, Councillor Keough, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this time, I would ask for a motion to go into closed meeting for labor relations or employee negotiations and its canteen contract. Motion by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor?